What's up, students? It's me, your average high schooler, and today I will be presenting to you a whole entire video about arguably the most important state of Unit 1 of AP World History, the Song Dynasty. I will be sharing with you my notes from last year, study tips, and things to look out for that got me a 5 last year. Hopefully, this will help you a lot. Please enjoy. Okay, so Unit 1 examines the major states and empires during the period 1200 to 1450 before the cross-regional connections of the modern era. The main themes you must remember for this unit are the diverse ways societies maintained order, created cultural cohesion and cultural diffusion, and the interactions between states. To be honest, the most important things you have to remember for this unit are the East Asian empires plus the Middle East, namely the Abbasid Caliphate in the Middle East and the Song Dynasty in China. In this video, we're going to talk about the Song Dynasty. The Song was the economic powerhouse of the world during this time, and the thing you must know for this dynasty is that they're extremely innovative. They invented gunpowder, paper money, woodblock printing, and even connected parts within their own empire for easy access to trade and transportation by renovating the Grand Canal. Song China enjoyed steady population growth, urbanization, and thriving trade. In fact, know that Song China was so rich that the manufacturers and artisans produced more than consumption. They sold excess goods in markets in China and Eurasia, namely luxury goods such as porcelain and silk. Of course, you cannot ignore how Song China became the most populous country on earth. Their rapid growth in population could be seen in this. The population jumped from about 50 to 60 million in the 19th century to 120 million by 1200. And behind this was the remarkable achievements in agricultural production, particularly the adoption from Vietnam of a drought-resistant type of rice, the champa rice. Now let's talk about the Song's cultural influence. The Song dynasty subscribed to the mandate of heaven concept, and basically they believed that the emperor was chosen by a divine power, which gave the emperor legitimacy to rule. The Song were huge fans of Neo-Confucianism as well. Now, what is Neo-Confucianism? This is very important, by the way, because it appeared on the test last year. There was a very prominent educator and philosopher called Confucius, who lived during the spring and autumn period of China. And Confucius, as you may know, came up with Confucianism, a Chinese philosophy emphasizing the fact that human society is hierarchical by nature, and filial piety, which is the notion that children are to obey their elders. So what is the difference between Neo-Confucianism and Confucianism, you may say? Well, Neo means new, and Neo-Confucianism, or New Confucianism, included elements from both Taoism and Buddhism, different to the prior Confucianism, as the one before was solely based upon Confucius's philosophy. As the Song dynasty heavily emphasized Confucianism, it carried a revival of Confucianism from the Tang dynasty. Now, the hierarchical nature of Confucianism was used to justify imperial rule. In other words, the emperors of the Song dynasty used the theory of having a hierarchical nature of society to prove that they had the right to rule above all. There was a thing in Song China called the civil service examination. And for over a millennium, this exam was used to select government officials from China. It is merit-based, meaning the people who do the best on these civil service exams eventually get the positions. Now it is odd, you may say, that I say this is merit-based. And why is this? Because only the rich at the time get access to education and therefore are able to do well on the exams. However, leaders subscribing to Neo-Confucianism stripped women of legal rights and made them endure social restrictions. There was almost no education access for women, as well as all people not belonging to the higher noble classes. Song China also practiced foot binding for women elites of the dynasty. This practice involves tightly binding the feet of young girls to change their shape and size. It was a sign of wealth, beauty, and discipline at the time. Since the women with bound feet could not walk properly, the person does not have to work. The effects of Neo-Confucianism wasn't only seen in Song China, however. You must note the influences the dynasty had culturally and politically on its neighboring Asian states, namely Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. Let's start with Korea, with its Goryeo dynasty. Korea was immediately adjacent to northeastern China, making China a serious military threat against Korea. As a result of this, Korea maintained a very close tributary relationship with the Song, and Korean emissaries and merchants also traveled frequently to the Song capital. The most significant and enduring influence is still Neo-Confucianism, however. Goryeo intellectuals eagerly adopted this philosophy, deeply influencing Korean law, education, and ethics. Furthermore, Korea also had its own civil service exam based on the Song model, which emphasized Confucian classics and creating a scholarly bureaucracy. Similar to Korea, Vietnam also maintained a tributary relationship with China. The elite culture of Vietnam borrowed heavily from China, adopting Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, administrative techniques, the examination system, and artistic and literary styles. Successive Vietnamese dynasties found the Chinese approach to government very useful, so they styled their rulers as emperors, they claimed the mandate of heaven, and they made use of Chinese court rituals. Now, Japan's relationship with the Song was different in many ways compared to the Koreans and the Vietnamese. This is because of Japan's geographical separation from China by almost 100 miles of ocean, which led to the Chinese unable to successfully invade or conquer their neighbor. There was no military threat from China. Japan's borrowing from China was voluntary. Chinese Buddhism took root in Japan, where Buddhist schools were established. Buddhism also deeply affected Japanese art, architecture, education, medicine, and even views of the afterlife. The more obvious influence would be the spread of the Chinese writing system. Take a look at this picture and you'll notice the similarities. But despite all the similarities and cultural influences, Japan never succeeded in creating an effective, centralized, and bureaucratic state to match that of China. Instead, they chose what they wanted to adapt to. Nevertheless, the golden age of innovation, economic prosperity, and cultural influence came to a halt after the conquest of the Mongols. By the mid 13th century, Genghis Khan and his successors had carved out the largest contiguous land empire in history. They were known for their fierce methods of conquering and battle on horseback, and their adherence to the nomadic way of life. Though the Song was highly prosperous, they were still militarily weaker than their northern neighbors. Eventually, Kublai Khan proclaimed the Yuan dynasty in 1271 in China, and for the first time, all of China was ruled by a non-Han, or ethnically Chinese people. Okay, that's it for Song China, and in the next video we will talk more about the Abbasid Caliphate, another major empire of the Middle East during this time. So stay tuned. Peace.